I was like, whoa, like, you know, calm down, Polygon. Welcome everybody, thank you guys for tuning in for another fun Dissected. Today we've got Dan Wolfe here showing off this awesome new lightweight mid-power Polygon e-bike. Dan, before we get into the bike, tell us a little bit about your racing background history and what you're doing with Polygon now and how that's helped steer the direction of the new bikes. So I came from racing Dano World Cups for nearly a decade, and then I did a full decade of racing World Enduros. So definitely done my fair share of race starts over the years, and I found as I got older I just got more and more interested in like ride characteristics of a bike, what works, what doesn't, and why. And yeah, it was just a natural progression within Polygon. Like, I'm with the brand 6 years, and it was just made perfect sense to continue on as a product developer with the company.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, this is like now my new role, and I'm like really grateful, really excited for the future.
Very cool. Now, when you are testing and developing bikes, for example, this, right? So one of the things we've talked about is the linkage and
Yes.
how there's still a couple of fine-tuning bits on stiffer or less stiff linkages.
Yeah.
How do you, as being such an elite level rider, put that experience to developing a bike that's maybe not going to be too stiff for the normal consumer like myself,
Yep.
but not too noodly for someone like you?
Yeah, I think it's actually a great question. I think that's really important. I've obviously rubbed shoulders with some incredible athletes over the years, and I think they struggle to see the difference between what a bike needs to be for them and the public. Sometimes what makes sense for them also makes sense for the public because you'll have less warranty issues. But also there's times where it just doesn't make sense for the public. So yeah, we constantly try to juggle that. We have various riders of different levels that also ride the bike.
And that's how you can create a bike, hopefully, that will perform, not be abusive for,
Yes.
you know, a casual rider, but not
Yeah.
underperform for the aggressive
Yeah,
rider.
yeah. You don't want it overly stiff. If it is, it's going to tire the rider out. But obviously, in the same, you know, line of reasoning, you don't want it overly flexy.
Yeah.
That causes its own issues as well.
Sure.
So yeah, we always are trying to like juggle that.
So before we check in a bit more with Dan, let's kind of fly over the bike and some of the details here. So you might notice that our bike actually is labeled the Siskiyou. We've been involved in this project with Polygon for quite a long time. Originally, this bike was slated to be called the Siskiyou TLe, and it was going to be a 140-150 bike. Since then, mostly at the behest of Dan and some of the other testers, they decided to make a couple of changes to the bike, also adopting the Collosus namesake. I think that was probably a good call because this does have their 6-bar suspension platform, which keeps in line with all of the other Collosus lined bikes in Polygon's naming structure. That also gives this bike a very different ride characteristic than the other Siskiyous we have tested, namely in the fact that it feels quite a bit better, especially off the top with an air shock, and it just gives a little bit more of a compliant, supple, and reactive feel, all things that we really like quite a bit. 140 mil out back, 160 millimeters out front, and just kind of a good do-it-all travel range, I'd say, for a do-it-all trail to aggressive all mountain bike. It is built out of carbon fiber and houses a 400 watt-hour battery with the Bosch Performance Line SX drive unit, which currently puts out 55 newton meters of torque. Obviously, there was a pretty cool update to the Bosch full power drive unit, so it'll be interesting to see. We haven't really heard any talk or rumors about it, but it might be nice if we could see those numbers creep up to 60 newton meters. Maybe I'm just speculating here, or wishful thinking, I should say. But yeah, as of filming, 55 newton meters out of this thing. Another nice thing to note is that Polygon sells and ships the bike with the Power More range extender. So right out the bat, you have that investment is made. You don't have to spend another, I think usually it's like $850 on a Power More down the road. bike comes shipped with it ready to go. There will be 2 models available. It will be the TLe 8 and the 0. Price points for those bikes will be $65.99 for the TLe 8, which is what we have here, and the TLe 0 will retail for $79.99. So major differentiators obviously in the price will be reflected in spec. Our 8 model here has Marzocchi suspension package, which we're more than happy with actually so far. Drive train is GX axis. It is the T-type on this bike, whereas on the 0 you've got XX, so a notable increase there. Both bikes come with Magura brakes. So that's kind of the high level stuff on most of the key spec components. We'll link to our written feature on the website as well as Polygon site so you can check all the smaller details out. What I can say is, and most of our crew would agree, we think this is the better value. If we were gonna be spending our own money to buy a bike, this Marzocchi stuff works quite well. The GX Axis stuff is solid. And I think at, that 65 price point, you're getting a pretty decent bike actually with some solid specs. Geometry on this thing feels pretty balanced so far, and it seems like Polygon has done a good job of creating something that's not overly aggressive or polarizing, but not overly conservative as well. The size large has a 485 millimeter reach. There's universal 450 millimeter rear end lengths across the size range, excuse me. Head tube angle sits at 64.5. There's an effective seat tube angle of 77 degrees. A bottom bracket height sits at 339.5 millimeters. And the overall wheelbase, again on the large, is 1,262 millimeters. So before we move into our conversation with Dan, let's talk about one of the larger changes in development of this bike over the course of our story. This has been kind of a long project with a few updates along the way. We were shipped a 160 millimeter fork. It was something that you'll hear Dan talk about. He had been up forking his bike for quite a while, and I think Polygon just agreed after a little bit of testing and feedback that why not just spec it with a 160 fork. So that's the way this bike is going to be set. Another update was this rear link right here. We were shipped the new updated link, and when we did the swap, right, and we pulled the old link out and the new link, and you look at them side by side, the thickness in the material, the way that it was made, it was a few grams heavier, but notably stiffer. And that was kind of a goal after some more testing and feedback, was that they wanted this bike to have a little bit more rigidity front to back. And so that new link design, especially with that up forked 160 mil travel up front, the bike just handles a little bit better. It offers a little bit more of a precise on point feel thanks to that new link design. And it's actually been really cool to just see what such a small component of the bike that is really very important, just by adding material and different shapes inside of that material or inside of that piece, how it can change the stiffness. So those are kind of going to be the 2 big changes. Obviously the name as well, our frame. So if you see any POV footage that says Siskiyou, it is the Colossus. We just didn't get a whole new frame with the updated badging, but this is the Colossus TLe with the updated link and the 160 mil fork. So let's check in with Dan, then we'll hit the trails and share our first thoughts on the bike.
This is our first ever SL e-bike, so it's quite a big deal. And then also jumping back into full carbon construction was quite a big deal as well. So they're like the big points on this. And then also, I guess, the IFS system, which you've seen on our Colossus Enduro bike. This is actually that, but just kind of exploded out.
Okay.
So it actually works on a similar level, but it's just like exploded out, and they were able to make it actually quite light
Nice.
because
Okay.
of that.
I love the way that that Colossus descends.
Oh yeah.
The smoothness and suppleness is, to me,
Mm.
a step above what the Siskiyou is. So I'm
Yes.
very excited to see how it will perform in a shorter travel package.
You won't put them in the same category. Like, it's a completely elevated ride. It's
Okay.
much more capable,
Okay.
and like under heavy braking, small bump sensitivity, and also this like pedaling platform, it's really comfortable.
Okay.
I purposely have cycled it quite a bit without the motor on, just to see
Yeah.
how it gets on, and like with no drag from the motor and just all the geometry, it's really nice.
Okay.
You know, you have to remind yourself you're on a trail bike,
Yeah.
because like I've ridden down some pretty gnarly stuff on this. Even yesterday I was in the bike park on it in Whistler, and yeah, rode down some pretty chunky tracks. So, and I've never ridden a trail bike in a bike park, you know.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Okay. All right. Any key takeaways? I mean, if you met someone who is looking for an SL eMTB, what would you say would be big standouts that the Polygon's offering?
Big standout is just like overall the build is like really confidence inspiring. There's nothing on this that's going to hold you back. We also have like a really large dropper. It's a 200mm dropper, and it can be fully slammed. So, you know, the saddle, like a really low ride over height. The bike does feel quite light and agile, although it does have a 450 rear end. It's still very easy to maneuver. So it kind of treads the needle quite well between being agile, but also very stable. And for anyone who've ridden 29ers over the years, you do want a bike that kind of juggles those things quite well, between like agility and being able to change direction, but also just like holding lines. So for me, that's like the big thing on this. I can't get over the weight. Like the track feel, like on the trail, just feels so nimble. And yeah, I love it in the black color.
Oh yeah. Split top tube. Any reason for that?
Mostly it's actually an aesthetic choice,
Okay.
but we did find that it's actually quite cool for setting up sag.
That's an added bonus.
But it's kind of an aesthetic choice.
Okay.
And yeah, it's quite different. Like initially when I saw the first drawings for it, I was like, whoa, like, you know, calm down, Polygon, you know, because like they're usually a bit more reserved, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's super cool.
Okay. Again, as with all of our dissecteds, this is not meant to be an official review, endorsement. Obviously, it's definitely not a long-term test. Stay tuned for that. We're really excited to have this bike in our SL eMTB shootout, which will be coming out in a few months. So we'll be putting a lot more test miles on it between now and then. As far as the bike's performance, how it felt, behaved, all in all, I was pretty impressed with the bike. I do believe that the bike, it felt like it wanted a little bit more of an intentional ride or input. It seemed to do better and excel as the speed picked up, as you started hitting stuff a little harder, as you kind of were riding it more awake rather than sleepily or being a passenger, which again, after being in Whistler, riding the bike park for days on end, we're a little tired, a little worn out. So some of the sections where we were kind of feeling fatigued and sluggish, we were thinking, we're gonna need to play with the suspension more, or maybe we don't quite have it dialed in just yet. But then if there was a section of trail that inspired us and it was really exciting and fun, all of a sudden we were like, oh no, we got the bike dialed, it feels great, it's really good. So I guess so far my takeaway on it is that this bike likes to be ridden a little bit harder, a little bit more aggressively. Otherwise, maybe running a little, I guess, less air pressure, a little more sag in the suspension might reward you with a smoother, more composed ride. But again, this is all part of the stuff we're gonna focus on for the long-term review as we play with different settings and tunes. Overall, the handling and the geometry of the bike felt quite balanced, and I liked it overall. There was definitely a fair amount of steep chutes. We had a little bit of high-speed rocky chunk, and more than a little bit of tight technical navigation through trees, switchbacks, technical climbing, technical slow speed descending, flat traversy bits of trail. So I think the bike does strike a pretty nice balance of being a do-it-all trail eMTB, which is exactly what this bike is intended to do. But I felt that this Z1 did a pretty good job. I never bottomed it out, I never blew through the travel. So all in all, I'd say this bike and this spec, maybe while you don't get some of the adjustability of the higher end Fox dampers that you would get on the next model up, it gets you out on the trail and having a really good time. And ultimately that's what we're all after. So so far, very pleased with the bike and excited to put a lot more miles on it. If you have any questions or you'd like to learn more, anything you'd like us to keep in mind for that long-term review, please let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, guys, and we'll see you out on the trails.